Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Summary study of the 10th canto of Krishna book, of Srimad Bhagavatam, called Krishna book, reading volume 2, chapter 27. Lord Krishna and Balarama meet the inhabitants of Vrndavana. Once upon a time, while Lord Krishna and Balarama were living peacefully in the great city of Dwarka, there was the rare occasion of a full solar eclipse, such as takes place at the end of every kalpa, or day of Brahma. At the end of every kalpa, the sun is covered by a great cloud, and incessant rain covers the lower planetary systems up to Svargaloka. By astronomical calculation, people were informed about this great eclipse prior to its taking place, and therefore everyone, both men and women, decided to assemble at the holy place in Kṛṣṇa, known as Shamanta Panchika. The Shamanta Panchika pilgrimage site is celebrated because Lord Parashuram performed great sacrifices there after having killed all the Kshatriyas in the world 21 times. Lord Parashuram killed all the Kshatriyas, and their accumulated blood flowed like a stream. Lord Parashuram dug 5 big lakes at Shamanta Panchika and filled them with this blood. Lord Parashuram is Vishnu Tattva. As stated in the Ishopanishad, Vishnu Tattva cannot be contaminated by any sinful activity. Yet, although Lord Parashuram is fully powerful and uncontaminated, in order to exhibit ideal character, he performed great sacrifices at Shamanta Panchika to atone for his so-called sinful killing of the Kshatriyas. By his example, Lord Parashuram established that the killing art, although sometimes necessary, is not good. Lord Parashuram considered himself culpable for the sinful killing of the Kshatriyas. Therefore, how much more are we culpable for such abominable, unsanctioned acts? Thus, killing of living entities is prohibited from time immemorial all over the world. Taking advantage of the occasion of the solar eclipse, all important persons visited the holy place of pilgrimage. Some of the important personalities are mentioned as follows. Among the elderly persons there were Akrura, Vasudeva, and Ugrasen. Among the younger generation there were Gada, Pradumna, Samba, and many other members of the Yadu dynasty who had come there with a view to atone for sinful activities accrued in the course of discharging their respective duties. Because almost all the members of the Yadu dynasty went to Kṛṣṇa, some important personalities like Aniruddha, the son of Pradumna, and Kritavarma, the commander-in-chief of the Yadu dynasty, along with Suchandra, Sukha, and Sharana, remained in Dwarka to protect the city. All the members of the Yadu dynasty were naturally very beautiful, yet on this occasion, when they appeared duly decorated with gold necklaces and flower garlands, dressed in valuable clothing, and properly armed with their respective weapons, their natural beauty and personalities were 100 times enhanced. The members of the Yadu dynasty came to Kṛṣṇa in their gorgeously decorated chariots, resembling the airplanes of the demigods, pulled by big horses that moved like the waves of the ocean, and some of them rode on sturdy, stalwart elephants that moved like the clouds in the sky. Their wives were carried on beautiful palanquins by beautiful men whose features resembled those of the Vidyadhars. The entire assembly looked as beautiful as an assembly of the demigods of heaven. After arriving in Kurukshetra, the members of the Yadu dynasty took their baths ceremoniously, with self-control, as enjoined in the Shastras, and they observed fasting for the whole period of the eclipse in order to nullify the reactions of their sinful activities. Because it is a Vedic custom to give in charity as much as possible during the hours of the eclipse, the members of the Yadu dynasty distributed many hundreds of cows in charity to the Brahmins. All those cows were fully decorated with nice dress and ornaments. The special feature of these cows was that they had golden ankle bells and flower garlands on their necks. All the members of the Yadu dynasty again took their baths in the lakes created by Lord Parashuram. After this, they sumptuously fed the Brahmins with first-class cooked food, all prepared in butter. According to the Vedic system, there are two classes of food. One is called raw food, and the other is called cooked food. Raw food does not include raw vegetables and raw grains, but food boiled in water, whereas cooked food is made in ghee. Chapatis, dal, rice, and ordinary vegetables are called raw foods, as are fruits and salads, but puris, kachuris, sangosas, sweet balls, etc., are all called cooked foods. All the Brahmins invited on that occasion by the members of the Yadu dynasty were fed sumptuously with cooked food. The ceremonial functions performed by the members of the Yadu dynasty externally resembled the ritualistic performances performed by the karmis. When a karmi performs some ritualistic ceremony, his ambition is sense gratification. Good position, good wife, good house, good children, good wealth. But the ambition of the members of the Yadu dynasty was different. Their ambition was to offer perpetual faith and devotion to Krishna. All the members of the Yadu dynasty were great devotees. As such, after many births of accumulated pious activities, they were given the chance to associate with Lord Krishna. In going to take their baths in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, or observing the regulative principles during the solar eclipse, or feeding the Brahmins, in all their activities, they simply thought of devotion to Krishna. Their ideal worshipful Lord was Krishna, and no one else. After feeding the Brahmins, it is the custom for the host, with their permission, to accept prasadam. Thus, with the permission of the Brahmins, all the members of the Yadu dynasty took lunch. Then they selected resting places underneath big shadowy trees, and when they had taken sufficient rest, they prepared to receive visitors, among whom there were relatives and friends, as well as many subordinate kings and rulers. There were the rulers of the Matsya province, Ushanara province, Koshala province, Vidarbha province, Kuru province, Srinjaya province, Kambodja province, Kekaya province, and many other countries and provinces. Some of the rulers belonged to opposing parties, and some were friends, but above all, the visitors from Vrndavana were most prominent. The residents of Vrndavana, headed by Nanda Maharaj, had been living in great anxiety because of separation from Krishna and Balarama. Taking advantage of the solar eclipse, they all came to see their life and soul, Krishna and Balarama. The inhabitants of Vrndavana were well-wishers and intimate friends of the Yadu dynasty. This meeting of the two parties, after long separation, was a very touching incident. Both the Yadus and the residents of Vrndavana felt such great pleasure in meeting and talking together. It was a unique scene. Meeting after long separation, they were all jubilant. Their hearts were throbbing, and their faces appeared like freshly bloomed lotus flowers. There were drops of tears falling from their eyes, and the hair on their bodies stood on end because of their extreme ecstasy. They were temporarily speechless. In other words, they began to dive in the ocean of happiness. While the men were meeting in that way, The women were also meeting one another in the same manner. They were embracing each other in great friendship, smiling very mildly, and looking at one another with much affection. When they were embracing each other in their arms, the saffron and kumkum spread on their breasts was exchanged from one person to another. They all felt heavenly ecstasy. Due to such heart-to-heart embracing, torrents of tears glided down their cheeks. The juniors were offering obeisances to the elders were offering their obeisances to the juniors. They were thus welcoming one another and asking after each other's welfare. Ultimately, however, all their talk was only of Krishna. All the neighbors and relatives were connected with Lord Krishna's pastimes in this world, and as such, Krishna was the center of all their activities. Whatever activities they performed, social, political, religious, conventional, or transcendental. The real elevation of human life rests on the knowledge and renunciation. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, in the first canto, devotional service rendered to Krishna automatically produces perfect knowledge and renunciation. The family members of the Yadu dynasty and the cowherd men of Vrndavana had their minds fixed on Krishna. That's the symptom of all knowledge. And because their minds were always engaged in Krishna, they were automatically freed from all material activities. This stage of life is called Yukta Vairagya, as enunciated by Srila Rupa Goswami. Knowledge and renunciation, therefore, do not mean dry speculation and renunciation of activities. Rather, one must start speaking and acting only in relationship with Krishna. In this meeting at Kurukshetra, Kunti Devi and Vasudeva, who were sister and brother, met after a long period of separation. Along with their respective sons and daughters-in-law, wives, children, and other family members. By talking among themselves, they soon forgot all their past miseries. Kunti Devi especially addressed her brother Vasudeva as follows. My dear brother, I am very fortunate because not one of my desires has ever been fulfilled. Otherwise, how could it happen that, although I have such a saintly brother as you, perfect in all respects, you did not inquire from me as to how I was passing my days in a distressed condition of life? It appears that Kunti Devi was remembering the miserable days when she had been banished along with her sons through the mischievous plans of Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. She continued, My dear brother, I can understand that when providence goes against someone, even one's nearest relatives also forget him. In such a condition, even one's father, one's mother, or one's own children will forget him. Therefore, my dear brother, I do not accuse you. Vasudeva replied to his sister, My dear sister, do not be sorry. Do not blame me in that way. We should always remember that we're only toys in the hands of Providence. Everyone is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's under His control only that all kinds of fruitive activities and the resultant reactions take place. My dear sister, you know that we were very much harassed by King Kamsa, and by his persecutions we were scattered here and there. We were always full of anxieties. Only in the last few days have we returned to our own places by the grace of God. After this conversation, Vasudeva and Ugrasen received the kings who came to see them, and they sufficiently welcomed them all. Seeing Lord Krishna present on the spot, all the visitors felt transcendental pleasure and became very peaceful. Some of the prominent visitors were as follows: Bhishmadev, Dronacharya, Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana, and Gandhari, along with her sons, King Yudhisthira, along with his wife, and the Pandavas, along with Kunti, Srinjaya, Vidura, Kripacharya, Kunti Bhoja, Virata, King Nagnajit, Purujit, Draupada, Salya, Drishtaketu, the king of Kashi, Damagosh, Vishalaksha, the king of Mithila, the king of Madras, formerly known as Madra, the king of Kekaya, Yadumanyu, Shusharma, Balika, along with his sons, and many other rulers who were subordinate to King Yudhisthira. When they saw Lord Krishna with his thousands of queens, They became fully satisfied at the sight of such beauty and transcendental opulence. All who were there personally visited Lord Balarama and Krishna, and being properly welcomed by the Lord, they began to glorify the members of the Yadu dynasty, especially Krishna and Balarama. Because he was the king of Bhoja, Ugrasen was considered the chief Yadu, and therefore the visitors specifically addressed him. Your Majesty, Ugrasen, king of the Bhojas, factually the Yadus are the only persons within this world who are perfect in all respects. All glories unto you, all glories unto you. The specific condition of your perfection is your always seeing Lord Krishna, who is sought after by many mystic yogis, undergoing severe austerities and penances for a great number of years. All of you are in direct touch with Lord Krishna at every moment. All the Vedic hymns are glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. The Ganges water is considered sanctified because it's being the water used to wash the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. The Vedic literatures are nothing but the injunctions of Lord Krishna. The purpose of the study of all the Vedas is to know Krishna. Therefore, the words of Krishna, the message of his pastimes, are always purifying. By the influence of time and circumstances, all the opulences of this world had become almost completely wiped out. But since Krishna has appeared on this planet, all auspicious features have again appeared due to the touch of his lotus feet. Because of his presence, all our ambitions and desires are gradually being fulfilled. Your Majesty, King of the Bhojas, you are related with the Yadu dynasty by matrimonial relationship and by blood relationship also. As a result, you're constantly in touch with Lord Krishna, and you have no difficulty in seeing him at any time. Lord Krishna moves with you, talks with you, sits with you, rests with you, and dines with you. The Yadus appear to be always engaged in worldly affairs, which are considered to lead to the royal road to hell. But due to the presence of Lord Krishna, the original personality of Godhead in the Vishnu category, who is omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent, all of you are factually relieved from all material contamination and are situated in the transcendental position of liberation and Brahman existence. When they had heard that Krishna would be present in Kurukshetra because of the solar eclipse, the residents of Vrndavana, headed by Maharaj Nanda, had also decided to go there, and therefore all the members of the Yadu dynasty were attending. King Nanda, accompanied by his cowherd men, had loaded all their necessary paraphernalia on bullock carts, and all of the Vrindavan residents had come to Kurukshetra to see their beloved sons, Lord Balarama and Lord Krishna. When the cowherd men of Vrndavana arrived in Kurukshetra, all the members of the Yadu dynasty became most pleased. As soon as they saw the residents of Vrndavana, they stood up to welcome them, and it appeared that they had again regained their life. Both had been very eager to meet, and when they actually came forward and met, they embraced one another to their heart's satisfaction, and remained in embrace for a considerable time. As soon as Vasudeva saw Nanda Maharaj, he jumped and ran over to him and embraced him very affectionately. Vasudeva began to narrate his past history, how he'd been imprisoned by King Kamsa, how his babies had been killed, and how immediately after Krishna's birth he had carried him to the place of Nanda Maharaj, and how Krishna and Balaram had been raised by Nanda Maharaj and his queen Yasoda as their own children. Similarly, Lord Balaram and Krishna also embraced King Nanda and Mother Yasoda, and then offered their respect unto their lotus feet by bowing down. Because of their feeling affection for Nanda and Yasoda, both Lord Krishna and Balaram became choked up, and for a few seconds they could not speak. The most fortunate King Nanda and Mother Yasoda placed their sons on their laps and began to embrace them to their full satisfaction. Because of separation from Krishna and Balaram, both King Nanda and Yasoda had been merged in great distress for a very long time. Now, after meeting them and embracing them, all their sufferings were mitigated. After this, Krishna's mother Devaki and Balaram's mother Rohini both embraced Mother Yasoda. They said, "Dear Queen Yasoda Devi, both you and Nanda Maharaj have been great friends to us, and when we remember you, we are immediately overwhelmed by the thought of your friendly activities. We are so indebted to you that even if we were to return your benediction by giving you the opulence of the King of Heaven, it would not be enough to repay you for your friendly behavior. We shall never forget your kindly behavior toward us. When both Krishna and Balaram were born, before they even saw their real father and mother, they were entrusted to your care, and you raised them as your own children, fostering them as birds take care of their offspring in the nest. You have nicely fed, nourished, and loved them, and have performed many auspicious ritualistic ceremonies for their benefit, religious ceremonies for their benefit. Actually, they're not our sons. They belong to you. Nanda Maharaj and yourself are the real father and mother of Krishna and Balaram. As long as they were under your care, they had not even a pinch of difficulty. Under your protection, they were completely out of the way of all kinds of fear. This most affectionate care which you have taken for them is completely befitting your elevated position. The most noble personalities do not discriminate between their own sons and the sons of others, and there cannot be any personalities more noble than Nanda Maharaj and yourself. As far as the gopis of Vrndavana were concerned, from the very beginning of their lives, they did not know anything beyond Krishna. Krishna and Balaram were their life and soul. The gopis were so attached to Krishna, they could not even tolerate not seeing him momentarily when their eyelids blinked and impeded their vision. They condemned Brahma, the creator of the body, because he foolishly made eyelids which blinked and checked their seeing Krishna. Because they had been separated from Krishna for so many years, the gopis, having come along with Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yasoda, felt intense ecstasy in seeing Krishna. No one can even imagine how anxious the gopis were to see Krishna again. As soon as Krishna became visible to them, they took him inside their hearts through their eyes and embraced him to their full satisfaction. Even though they were embracing Krishna only mentally, they became so ecstatic and overwhelmed with joy that for the time being they completely forgot themselves. The ecstatic trance which they achieved simply by mentally embracing Krishna is impossible to achieve even for great yogis constantly engaged in meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna could understand that the gopis were wrapped in ecstasy by embracing him in their minds, and therefore, since he is present in everyone's heart, he also reciprocated by embracing from within. Krishna was sitting with his mother Yasoda and his other mothers, Devaki and Rohini. But when the mothers engaged in talking, he took the opportunity, went to a secluded place to meet the gopis. As soon as he approached the gopis, the Lord began to smile, and after embracing them and inquiring about their welfare, he began to encourage them, saying, "My dear friends, you know, both Lord Balaram and myself left Vrndavana just to please our relatives and family members. Thus, we were long engaged in fighting with our enemies, and were obliged to forget you, who were so much attached to me in love and affection. I can understand that by this action I have been ungrateful to you, but still, I know you are faithful to me. May I inquire if you have been thinking of us, although we have had to leave you behind? My dear gopis, do you now dislike remembering me, considering me to have been ungrateful to you? Do you take my misbehavior with you very seriously?" After all, you should know it was not my intention to leave you. Our separation was ordained by Providence, who, after all, is the supreme controller and does as he desires. He causes the intermingling of different persons and again disperses them as he desires. Sometimes we see that, due to the presence of clouds and strong wind, atomic particles of dust and broken pieces of cotton are intermingled together, and after the strong wind subsides, all the particles of dust and cotton are again separated, scattered in different places. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the creator of everything. The objects which we see are different manifestations of his energy. By his supreme will, we are sometimes united and sometimes separated. We can therefore conclude that ultimately we're absolutely dependent on his will. Fortunately, you've developed loving affection for me, which is the only way to achieve the transcendental position of association with me. Any living entity who develops such unalloyed devotional affection for me certainly at the end goes back to home, back to Godhead. In other words, unalloyed devotional service and affection for me are the cause of supreme liberation. My dear Gopi friends, you may know from me that it is my energies only which are acting everywhere. Take, for example, an earthen pot. It's nothing but a combination of earth, water, air, fire, and sky. It is always of the same physical composites, whether in its beginning, during its existence, or after its annihilation. When it's created, the earthen pot is made of earth, water, fire, air, and sky. While it remains, it is the same in composition, and when it is broken and annihilated, its different ingredients are conserved in different parts of the material energy. Similarly, at the creation of this cosmic manifestation, during its maintenance, and after its dissolution, everything is but a different manifestation of my energy. And because the energy is not separate from me, it is to be concluded that I am existing in everything. In the same way, the body of a living being is nothing but a composition of the 5 elements, and the living entity embodied in the material condition is also part and parcel of me. The living entity is imprisoned in the material condition on account of his false conception of himself as the supreme enjoyer. This false ego of the living entity is the cause of his imprisonment in material existence. As the Supreme Absolute Truth, I am transcendental to the living entity as well as to his material embodiment. The two energies, material and spiritual, are both acting under my supreme control. My dear Gopis, I request that instead of being so afflicted, you try to accept everything with a philosophical attitude. Then you will understand that you are always with me, and there is no cause of lamentation in our being separated from one another. This important instruction of Lord Krishna's to the Gopis can be utilized by all devotees engaged in Krishna consciousness. The whole philosophy is considered on the basis of inconceivable, simultaneous oneness and difference. In Bhagavad-gītā, the Lord says that he is present everywhere in his impersonal feature. Everything is existing in him, but still he is not personally present everywhere. The cosmic manifestation is nothing but a display of Krishna's energy, and because the energy is not different from the energetic, nothing is different from Krishna. When this absolute consciousness, Krishna consciousness, is absent, we're separated from Krishna. But fortunately, if this Krishna consciousness is present, then we're not separated from Krishna. The process of devotional service is the revival of Krishna consciousness. And if the devotee is fortunate enough to understand that the material energy is not separated from Krishna, Then he can utilize the material energy and its products in the service of the Lord. But in the absence of Krishna consciousness, the forgetful living entity, although part and parcel of Krishna, falsely puts himself in the position of enjoyer of the material world, and thus, being implicated in material entanglement, is forced by the material energy to continue his material existence. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad-gītā. Although a living entity is forced to act by the material energy, he falsely thinks that he is the all-in-all and the supreme enjoyer. If the devotee knows perfectly that the Archa-vigraha, or deity form of Lord Krishna in the temple, is exactly the same Satchidananda Vigraha as Krishna himself, then his service to the temple deity becomes direct service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, the temple itself, the temple paraphernalia, food offered to the deity, are also not separate from Krishna. One has to follow the rules and regulations prescribed by the acharyas, and thus, under superior guidance, Krishna realization is fully possible, even in this material existence. The gopis, having been instructed by Krishna in this philosophy of simultaneous oneness and difference, remained always in Krishna consciousness, and thus became liberated from all material contamination. The consciousness of the living entity who falsely presents himself as the enjoyer of the material world is called jiva-kosha. Which means imprisonment by the false ego. Not only the gopis, but anyone who follows these instructions of Krishna becomes immediately freed from the jiva-kosha imprisonment. A person in full Krishna consciousness is always liberated from false egoism. He utilizes everything for Krishna's service and is not at any time separated from Krishna. The gopis therefore prayed to Krishna, "Dear Krishna, from your navel emanated the original lotus flower, which is the birthsite of Brahma, the creator. No one can estimate your glories or your opulence, which therefore remain always a mystery, even to the highest thoughtful men, the masters of all yogic power. The conditioned soul, fallen in the dark well of this material existence, can very easily, however, take shelter at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Thus his deliverance is guaranteed." The gopis continued, "Dear Krishna, we're always busy in our family affairs. We therefore request that you remain within our hearts as the rising sun, and that will be your greatest benediction." The gopis are always liberated souls because they are fully in Krishna consciousness. They only pretended to be entangled in household affairs in Vrindavan. In spite of their long separation, the inhabitants of Vrindavan, the gopis, were not interested in the idea of going with Krishna to his capital city, Dwarka. They wanted to remain busy in Vrindavan and thus feel the presence of Krishna in every step of their lives. They immediately invited Krishna to come back to Vrindavan. This transcendental emotional existence of the gopis is the basic principle of Lord Chaitanya's teachings. The Rath Yatra festival, observed by Lord Chaitanya, is the emotional process of taking the Lord Krishna back to Vrindavan. Srimati Radharani refused to go with Krishna to Dwarka to enjoy his company in the atmosphere of royal opulence, but wanted to enjoy his company in the original Vrindavan atmosphere. Lord Krishna, being profoundly attached to the gopis, never goes away from Vrindavan, and the gopis and other residents of Vrindavan remain fully satisfied in Krishna consciousness. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the second volume, 27th chapter of Krishna. Lord Krishna and Balarama meet the inhabitants of Vrindavan.